Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host Greg Thompson along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
I'm doing well. I think a lot of Bills Mafia out there pretty antsy, but I'm feeling pretty good about things. I know Patriots have had a good week. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit here at some point in the show. But I just want to remind everybody that the Bills are the champs. The same respect that I gave to the Patriots for 20 years, Buffalo Bills are the champs until proven otherwise. So I don't want to hear anything about how good New England is or anything like that. It's been a good week for them, but I'm here to talk about a really good week for the Buffalo Bills. I think a sneaky, really good week for the Buffalo Bills here.
Yeah, no, for sure. We're going to go through every single piece. The last time we were talking, all that had happened was a surprise extension for Matt Milano, and that had just happened that day. We had seen, the release of Quentin Jefferson, the release of John Brown, little, sad about that, some of the restructures for Mitch Morris and those things, but really nothing else had happened. So I know some of you guys have listened to Aaron and I and some of our other shows. Anthony did an awesome job hosting kind of a roundtable Monday night on Disguised coverage. Last night, Joe Marino joined the guys on the hoof and had a great discussion on day two. So we're still going to run through a handful of the moves here tonight just to make sure you're all aware of them, just react to them a little bit, and then we'll talk through what we think are maybe some of the additional options that are out there and kind of go from there.
Yep.
All right, so obviously after the Matt Milano news was kind of the position that many of us were in, and they're like, okay, well, they re-signed Milano, but that's probably going to be it as far as the big guys remaining, so we probably aren't going to have anybody else, and boom, the next day, Daryl Williams, 3 years, $24 million, locked up both the marquee free agents that lots of us had debated, hey, if you're, gun to your head and you're forced to choose the better linebacker versus the more valuable position, what are you going to pick? What did you think when they got them both figured out?
Yeah, so I think I bought into just how that narrative came towards the end of the season, that they both played so well, the market's going to be there for both of them, and at least one of them is going to go chase that bigger contract. So I was quite surprised to get them both back. I was pretty much on the record of just being that we were going to get one of these guys back. I thought it was going to happen in a different manner. I didn't think it happened before free agency began. I thought they would experience free agency. We'd see some of those top-heavy signings like we saw New England make and some of these teams overpay in this kind of tighter market. But now we're starting to see those contracts come back down to earth. And that's where I thought we would see Matt Milano and Daryl Williams be at in the market, and that at least one of them would say, my contract's close enough where I'd rather go win with the Bills. I do think that might be what happened for a couple in that illegal tampering period, that at least one of them reached out to see what the market was like. And he and his representative said, hey, Buffalo's pretty close to where you're going to end up at, and you might as well stay here and win if you like it here. And everybody's been saying that so far in free agency, that they want to be in Buffalo. They want to take less money to be here. So I don't think it was for a lack of other offers out there. I'm sure Milano explored other offers. I'm sure Williams did too. And just ultimately they knew the chance to win's here, and the money wasn't that big of a difference.
Yeah, and it's interesting that I was torn. I kind of had my eyes set on maybe a younger player in the draft or some other options there. And I think that once I saw the numbers, I was totally on board. The fact that it was $6 million and change in 2021 and an average of $8 million a year, that is a really good value for a starting right tackle. Now that means they're paying him as a below average starting tackle. So if you're telling me that's the bar from the price, and that I think he's an average offensive tackle that played above average last year, I feel pretty good about that. So I at least feel I would have been a lot more torn if it was 11, 12 million and that I thought we were paying him as though he was, he had stretches where he played like a top 5 right tackle last year and ended the season kind of top 10 from a right tackle standpoint. I would have been frustrated if we paid him that, but getting the value we got, I was comfortable with it.
Yeah, and here's one thing that I try to look at, and it's the same way I view cornerback and cornerback too. And I know a lot of people, obviously we'll get to that signing here in a little bit with Levi coming back, but you look around the league, you're not going to find a lot of teams with two really good tackles. We saw what happened with the Ravens. They had two really good tackles. One of them wanted to get paid like a left tackle. He wanted the opportunity to go get paid in the spot that pays more. So when you do have it, it's rare, and you're going to lose those guys anyway. So I actually would have been happy if available, to overpay him a little bit to have another average, decent tackle. We saw what happens when you have a Cody Ford over a tackle. We don't want that again. I'd rather have, Daryl Williams and the flaws that he has versus go out on the market and bring somebody new in. And I know I ripped continuity a little bit this week, but if the chance to upgrade isn't substantial, I'll take continuity, right?
Well,
like if the talent doesn't exist where I'm taking a full material step up, then continuity is better than not.
Well, here, let me cue up the next move for you. So after those two, obviously everyone assumed, okay, well, that's it. They probably could barely squeeze those two moves in. We didn't think it was possible to fit those two moves in. So, we're going to have to cut Matakevich. We're going to have to cut some other guys. We're going to have to wave goodbye to everybody else. And then, boom, the next day, they signed John Feliciano.
Yeah.
So, again, I think you and I were both trying to be fair in that we don't think Feliciano is trash. Like, we're not saying he's a terrible player. I've said multiple times I thought the deal he signed before at 2 years, $7 million was the right deal for him. I think he's a $3.5 million valuable rotational guy on the interior that if you need him to play, that's great. But if you're depending on him as a key starter, you're probably not ecstatic. This deal doesn't change that for me. I don't hate, $5.5 million is fine. I think the cap number this year is going to be closer to 3 or 4. We're waiting on those details. I'm not upset by this, but I certainly, once we re-signed Daryl Williams, I had my heart set on an upgrade at guard. And I know this, and I guess we'll bring it in now, just since we're talking about guards. They also tendered Ike Bottker at the $2.1 million restricted free agent tender. So, probably $6.5 million this year between both Bottker and Feliciano makes me worried that our only path for an upgrade is the draft now.
Yeah, and that's my concern, is that you're hoping one of those top guys in the first round is there at 30.
Sure.
Bean has a history of trading up, so I'm actually on board because these signings, while it's nice to have that continuity and bring that back, here's a spot where I do think that you can upgrade the talent to a substantial point where you can get over the lack of continuity to improve that position. I think, Mitch Morris was an interesting kind of polarizing person towards the end of the season with everything that happened with him sitting and sort of being benched, but not, and the communication there, and everyone thought he was out the door, and he was able to, obviously we talked about that, restructure and stay. So having him back, I thought that they wouldn't do him the disservice again of putting the talent around him to be below average NFL starters. At least one of the positions needs to be addressed. And there's still guys out there, and we'll speculate a little bit on maybe some of the moves they can do, because this is backup rotational money. I think that this is a fair deal to bring Feliciano back on. I think, allow him to compete to start, but I'll be pretty upset with this organization if it's Feliciano and Bottker are slotted in as the starters with no real competition this summer. I hope that they fill some spots with a step above in talent, either through the draft or in free agency, or at least on par, and really push them for those spots, because I do want that position to improve. I don't think it was fair to Mitch Morris.
Yeah. We'll bring it up here, Justin. The Kevin Zeitler signing hurt me. Seeing Zeitler 3 years for $22 million versus Feliciano 3 years for $17 million. I would have paid the extra $5 million. I would have paid the extra $1.5 million a year. I would have gone from $5.5 million up to $7.5 million for Zeitler. So
and then bring back Bottker, and I'm okay with hiding Bottker with that.
If we had Zeitler on the one side and then Bottker, Ford, and a draft pick, or heck, even just Zeitler, I wouldn't even need the draft pick.
Yeah, Ford too, right?
So because I'm okay with Ford being on the other spot.
Totally. Let them fight it out.
Yeah, so Dwayne, we appreciate the contribution very much. Asking, I would like to hear you guys think we fix our running situation with about the same line. The one piece I will say is, I know, Aaron, you and Eric both kind of pumped the brakes on but we didn't see any games with these 5 linemen. The only part that I think that matters a little bit is that Ford and Feliciano are our 2 best run blockers. So maybe a full season of those guys being healthy helps in the run game a little bit. They're both our 2 worst pass blockers. So I don't know if I'm ecstatic for that piece of it, but there's a path where I can talk myself into the run game could be a little bit better if Ford is healthy and playing at his full potential, and then that makes Feliciano our fifth best lineman. That's probably the only path. Without Elijah Vera Tucker or a Wyatt Davis or a Landon Dickerson or whoever, one of those kind of guys coming in the draft, without that, the only path I can try to talk myself into is that Ford plays up to his potential and that we get more of that 38th overall pick we thought we were getting than the guy who struggled playing through injury last year.
Yeah, right. Like even small improvements to both their play, I think, is all it's going to take. And when I'm looking at the run game and talking about fixing it, and that's been a topic of conversation here all offseason, I don't think there's a lot that needs to get fixed. I think you need to squeeze some more production out of it. I don't know that it's this big project that needs to be torn apart and rebuilt from the ground up. There was productive moments in the run game. We saw 4-minute drills where the run game ended games. It wasn't a totally broken, unproductive performance by Devin Singletary and Zach Moss.
I think Zach Moss was coming into his own right when he got hurt, honestly.
I do too. I felt pretty good. I said it a number of times. People are welcome to go back in the mid-season of me saying I see the ability for this to be productive. I just don't think that this offense is going to be predicated on the run game. I think we're going to see that next year too. I know there was a lot of talk about it from Bean and Dable here to the end of the year, and that they want to improve that. I think they'll add to the room. I think that they will improve some of the blocking schemes, and hopefully Ford improves. And that's all those small little things is probably enough to increase the production to make it a more part of this offense. But I don't think they're going to change things up to really try to feature the run game or become any type of run first team. A free agent signing here we're going to talk about in a little bit as well only added to that theory of mine that they're still going to continue. A lot of people want a lot more 12 personnel. You and I argued a little bit about personnel packages. I think it's still going to be similar to the offense we saw last year. The strength of this team is the Josh Allen and that arm and Stephon Diggs and all the other plethora of weapons. And we just added Emmanuel Sanders, which we can talk about. I think fixing the run game is only going to be some minor stuff to just get a little bit more production out of, and it'll be more of a nice asset to this prolific passing offense.
Oh, for sure. And I think that, don't get me wrong, I'm hoping we get interrupted by breaking news during the show here, but right now there's no evidence that they're doing anything other than going heavy with wide receivers. So, Brian, if you're saying no running back in the first round, you're talking to the wrong guy, because Aaron's totally on board with it.
I would do it. Yeah, you want to know how you fix the running game with a bad offensive line is you draft a stud of a running back that can make holes without needing the offensive line to be there. I have no problems with the running back at round one, especially at 30 in the situation the Bills are in. If they were like a rebuilding team in the top 15, sure. At 30, it's not a big difference from the second round. I'd take a running back in the second round all day.
So when our man Eric says we need big splash moves, I know he's talking about Matt Haack. So the Bills. That
was a weird segue.
I was trying to figure out a way to give him some shout there. The Bills signed a new punter. So Matt Haack was a solid punter with the Dolphins. Any Bills fan listening, you probably remember him from that crazy fake play or 2-point conversion play Miami ran, where they had 4 people out wide and 4 people out wide, and he was under center and had the kicker behind him, and he ran it in for a touchdown. He also threw one as well. He was a college wide receiver at one point and then converted to punter. And then, don't encourage him, Daryl. He is the polar opposite of Corey Bojorquez. So Bojorquez is the most powerful punter in the NFL, but oftentimes couldn't control that and kicked it into the end zone all the time in a frustrating amount. He is very, very good at Matt Haack is very, very good at pinning teams inside the 20, but doesn't have the strongest leg. So oftentimes, is going to maybe be a little underwhelming that way, but is a good directional punter. And that when people ask but is this an upgrade? What's a change? It's telling us that they care more about that criteria and trait than the other one, because neither of them were great, amazing punters, because the amazing punters do both. where you can have direction. Michael Dixon with Seattle can kick it a mile and directionally put it exactly where he wants. Neither is these guys are that. He got paid accordingly. He got $1.5 million a year. That's not anything crazy. I was president of the Corey Bojorquez fan club. I certainly was
a tough day for him.
Sad because I didn't see it as an upgrade, but I accepted it in the fact of, well, I guess they care about this more than that. And when you have a great offense and you're not trapped back inside your 20 all that often, maybe the distance doesn't matter as much. But how much do you care about the new punter?
I don't care about it at all. I don't care about punters. I think it's great. The thing I like the most about a punter is consistency. And we saw more consistency with Borges last year, but we also saw his numbers of attempts go way down, which is another good thing why I don't care about punters is I don't think that this offense is going to punt a ton more than they did here this last year. I think this is a prolific offense. It's going to be tough to stop. And I do agree with you. Yeah, they're not going to be punting from the 20 a whole lot. I think that they're going to have a chance to move the ball. And that stuff really matters in some of those close games. Is field position and keeping field position. And sometimes you need a guy to put it on point in order for you. They have good teams. Sarah Neal's going to get down there. Whoever they're bringing in, Manikevich is going to get down there.
We have better coverage units. So some people looked at the net average for Haack and saw that we have a better coverage unit than Miami did. Yeah. So that should be an improvement for him in the net and the return average. A couple people I heard were talking about his punt return average against him as though that was an indication of him, and I'm like, well, the punter doesn't really control that. That's more of a coverage unit thing, but
there's
sometimes you get a line drive kick.
Aren't fair. It is really often a unit.
Yeah, things like touchback percentage, your fair catch percentage, your hang time, those are controlled by the punter.
Sure.
Things like net return average and gross, that one's tough to put on the punter.
Yeah, and so we're talking about maybe not an upgrade. I don't think it's a step back at all.
It's a change.
It's a change. I do think Bojo was probably going to get a little bit more money. I think if he would have taken the same deal, he'd probably maybe be back. I don't know that they make the change. I think there's probably some more money out there for him. I think it looks good this season he had, even though he just barely qualified. Yes, exactly. You don't have to worry about it if you don't have to do it. I think even we're spending too much time talking about it because I think it's a lateral move to something that's different. I'm fine with it. Yeah. Just be consistent. Be a consistent NFL punter. You can be average. I don't care. Just don't screw things up. Like, don't shank punts. Don't be the reason that we get on the post-game show and you're the reason that we lost. Just go out and do your job and be average. Totally fine by me.
So that sentence that I said about upgrade versus downgrade and that it's just a change to prioritizing a different skill set is the exact same thing for our next move. Some fans asking, hey, did we offer a pay cut to John Brown? We see him sign for less money with the Raiders, and we went out and signed Emmanuel Sanders. All that tells me is that they prioritize Emmanuel Sanders' elite route running and exceptional hands. He has like an insane low drop rate over his entire career, below 3%. He's 3 years older with a better health record. So some people asked about that. John Brown, 31, with a rougher injury history versus Sanders at 34, but has stayed pretty healthy. I'll call that a wash. John Brown is a more explosive athlete. He is faster down the field, deep speed. Sanders actually has really high acceleration off the line. His burst off the line is really high. Right. But he doesn't have, Brown's deep speed and the way he threatens a cornerback and gets those free comeback routes. But Sanders is a better route runner and more consistent. John Brown didn't have a drops problem, so you're getting a slight upgrade there. But all this was, I don't see this as a big upgrade or downgrade. I also think it was just they're telling us what they prioritize. They kept Cole Beasley, Stephon Diggs, adding Emmanuel Sanders. We have the best route running trio in the NFL. That's obviously what they care about. So I know this came up before. He was pursued at the trade deadline a year and a half ago. He was then literally on the phone with our people when they didn't call back because we stopped and went and traded for Stephon Diggs. They've been after him for 2 years. Yeah. And now finally had an opportunity to get him and brought him in at a fine number. I'm fine with $6 million. It's not an ecstatic deal. It'll make me laugh at the Patriots paying Nelson Aguilar $13 million. Right. But it's fine money. I see it as a even swap overall with Smoke. Not a downgrade, but not an upgrade either.
I think that's fair. I think that's totally fair. I think there's an argument that it's an upgrade.
There are people I respect who think it's an upgrade.
And I think the Bills think it's an upgrade because
Warren Sharp thinks it's an upgrade.
Totally. And I think the Bills do. I think the points that you made, the podcast with Chris Collinsworth, where he had mentioned the trade that they tried to trade for him. When they were making those trades, they were trying to get a true number one, because John Brown put up numbers like a number one. But I think in the building, they knew that he was a better support role wide receiver at that. I think they thought bringing in Emmanuel Sanders would upgrade that room and put him above John Brown in that situation. That's just my opinion. That's me speculating.
Also removes all stress from Gabe Davis.
Yes.
There's no pressure on him.
No, absolutely. And this fills the void, the worry that I had of losing John Brown. The reason I want John to stay so much is because I am not sure on Hodgins, what he's going to be. And I didn't want an injury to derail this great wide receiving room. And that's what happened last year. John Brown goes down and Gabe Davis steps up. Now you remove John Brown from that. If you don't sign Emmanuel Sanders, I don't know who you can go get. There's probably some other names out there, but I think this is a really good fit for that room and how they're progressing forward. Now you don't worry about that. If Emmanuel Sanders goes down, okay, then we'll go run it back with Gabe Davis. If Gabe Davis has a sophomore slump or goes down, like there's less worry. This is a real insurance move. Kenny Stills was thought to be maybe that insurance move. This is a massive upgrade from keeping Kenny Stills. Sure. So this is a legitimate stress on defensive coordinators. I don't know that it's Gabe Davis comes in slotted at the third receiver. I think people think Emmanuel Sanders is going to be the fourth receiver, and Davis is just going to be handed a starting position. I think you're going to see a lot of Emmanuel Sanders in this offense. I think the things that they can do with him and Beasley and Diggs and the route running combinations and the option combinations, these are smart veteran receivers that get great separation. Like, this is just a field day for Josh Allen, and it fits a lot better, in my opinion, than the skill set John Brown had. I'm super appreciative of John Brown and what he brought to this offense and bringing that to Josh Allen. And another thing, the thing I liked the most about John Brown was all the comments that Josh Allen would make about what a professional is. You're swapping it with another, everybody raves
super
about
well respected. Yes. College teammate of Cole Beasley.
Yes, this is a big process move. It keeps the locker room. It's an even swap there in the leadership and what kind of process player he is. Yeah.
So Carl asking here, so you're saying that you're going to take this incredible talented quarterback and keep him stressed and put the entire offense on his shoulders? Yes, that's going to be this team goes as far as
Josh
Allen.
We're going to pay him a ton of money
for the next decade when we pay him $400 million. Yep, that's how
a ton of money to be the guy that we either win or die with.
Yeah, this is how this goes.
Yeah.
I've got a couple people asking me this. I saw it came up on Twitter right as we were getting on the show. There is a contract clause in Deion Dawkins and Trey White's contracts that the team built in as a trigger that removes some guaranteed money and it triggers future years. I'm still researching if that automatically creates cap space or just makes it easier to do a restructure. Either way, they have the option to create $7.5 million in cap space from both Deion Dawkins and Trey White, which I expect them to do with some of the other moves we'll talk about later in the show. But I don't have the details on it yet, so I need to research it a little bit more. I don't know if it just automatically happens when they enact the clause and trigger the extra year in the contracts, or if they have to do that and restructure some of the salary for this year. I'll get back to you guys when I find that out.
Yeah, just tell me when we save money and get new things. That's what I want to know.
Yes, that's the important part. So, Carlo, we'll get to your question coming up here. Aaron and I were both huge fans of the deal that Reddit got, not because the Bills didn't get him, but because of what it says about the market. He's more of a 3-4 linebacker kind of guy than a straight up 4-3 edge player, but I love what it says about Melvin Ingram or Terrell Basham or Carlos Dunlap or any of those kind of guys that are out there.
Yeah.
Clowney, if that's where the market is, I think the Bills can get one of those, and we'll talk about that in a bit here.
Yeah.
As far as remaining moves for the Bills, a couple housekeeping ones. We got the official numbers on Vernon Butler and Mario Addison, saved about $2 million for each of those. Somehow, Brandon Beane traded Lee Smith. He got Atlanta to give up a future 7th round pick that I I will say I didn't see it listed as a conditional 7th round pick.
It's no.
I have to assume there's a condition that if he retires, we don't get that pick. But regardless, I actually interpret that as a courtesy to Smith that he told them he's not ready to retire and still wanted to play. So they poked around and said, hey, anybody interested in him? And then the fact that they were able to get a pick and they didn't cut him and have him try to go after the minimum, good for him and great for Brandon Beane. Add that to the list of Marshall Newhouse and Russell Bodine as players he got picks for that don't make any sense. And then you add in all those picks until the move we had just earlier this evening. That put us, we went through the math earlier today, we think we're at about $6 million in cap space. I'm guessing on the number for Feliciano. I'm guessing on the number for Tyler Matakevich. We think we have the number for Botker. And then tonight we saw that although we didn't exercise the tender, just amazing news on Levi Wallace.
Say it. My guy.
It really was. And for anybody who hasn't seen it, I encourage you to go look at the feed for Mike Garafolo and the comments from Levi and his agent that Levi told his agent, don't even call the other teams back. I don't care what they're offering. I only want to go back to Buffalo because we're going to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah. We're not going to counter him.
It's unbelievable. Like, if you want a definition of what process looks like, that's it. Yeah. That is 100% it. A player who was young, had starting experience, had the opportunity to probably go take a higher paycheck from a crappy team and instead wanted to stay for cheap. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and I want to preface this. I want more at cornerback too. I want to bring in more competition, all that
Same
stuff.
as Bakker. I think that
Totally.
Bakker's fine to bring back. Yeah. I don't want him to be the only player.
I like Levi Wallace a lot. The reason I like Levi Wallace a lot is I cannot stand when the fan base just beats on one player and unfairly treats a player. And I think guys like we talked about my feelings about Dawson Knox this morning on Twitter. If you want to go back and look at Greg and I go back and forth for an hour. Levi Wallace is the same way though, in my opinion. Like, he's not a great player. He's an adequate cornerback too. You look around the league. I want you to look at rosters around the league and tell me much better cornerback duos. I know Gilmore and Jackson in New England were probably a much better cornerback duo, but you don't have a lot of that league-wide where you have two really good athletic cornerbacks that don't get burnt. Somebody's going to get burnt if you line up across from a good cornerback. So unless they go first round, and that person will probably be given the starting job, I think they're bringing in people that are going to compete with Levi and Dane Jackson. Yeah. This is probably right now the competition that I'm most excited to see and how this shakes out, because I think it's the most important as far as what the 2021 Bills look like. But they've been trying to replace Levi Wallace for a while now and unsuccessfully. I think going into it right now, I think he's still cornerback too until proven otherwise. This is kind of, unless, again, they pick 30th or trade up and get a cornerback or make some other splash move here for a bigger name. I think Levi starts camp as cornerback number 2, and it's his job to lose. And I don't think that's not a good bet for a guy that's not going to bring it, because Levi Wallace has not lost the cornerback competition outright yet. He always ends up with that job.
Other guys have thought they were beating him out too.
Yeah.
So it's funny, and I like Justin's comment here. Besides the comments from Levi Wallace, the fact that you had Tyler Matakevich took a pay cut, Vernon Butler took a pay cut, Mario Addison took a pay cut, Mitch Morris took a pay cut. John Brown was genuinely hurt when he got cut. Like, he was upset that he got cut. Like, and I'm not celebrating that. That's not a good thing per se, but it tells you how much he cared. And that he didn't want to be cut loose, and wanted to be able to be back. So, it's pretty incredible what this has done. So, all things told here, this basically tells you we are losing virtually no starters from last year.
Quentin Jefferson.
So, yeah, depending on how you're counting Quentin Jefferson, talk about the replacement from a Star Lotulelei standpoint.
Right.
But yes, Quentin Jefferson, and then technically, if you called Josh Norman, I don't know if he was out there for the first snap.
Right.
But I think on paper we're somewhere in the range of 20 out of 22 starters, 21 out of 22 starters. And I think even taking that a step further, I think you're talking about 23, 24 of the 27 highest snap count players. Right. Even before bringing back Feliciano, the Bills were already number one in the NFL in returning snap count. They then returned Levi Wallace, Ike Boettger, and John Feliciano. They're easily well below that. So thank you, John. Always really so generous for us. Yeah. We really, really appreciate you. So that's just to set the table that right now we've talked about all the guys who returned, all the guys who took pay cuts. We did lose John Brown and Quentin Jefferson. We traded away Lee Smith. All that together, we think leaves us with about $6 million in cap space. We have two more options with Deion Dawkins and Trey White where we can free up 15 more with really no downside. You could extend Jerry Hughes. That's one we could see. Other than that, I don't think there's any obvious cuts on the team that we should. Now that Lee Smith is gone, that was the last obvious one. And right. Tyler Matakevich took a pay cut. He was the other one that could have been a more obvious one. So all those different moves, I think we could pretty comfortably get to $20 million, and you could do closer to $25 million if you did a small extension with Jerry Hughes. With that money and what's left, I'll let you start it out at a position. Where do you want to look first at where you'd like to see them take one more move?
Yeah, a big splash move. I'd love to bring Trent Murphy back. No, I'm just kidding. I just wanted to.
Well, let's stick at that position. Let's stick at that spot.
Yeah, no, I think there's a couple positions left that this is Brandon Beane. This is classic Brandon Beane. I think everyone tries to figure out what he's going to do, and he's pretty consistent. He likes to fill holes. Before going into the draft. I think he wants to get as many of those positions that we all know are needs filled prior to the draft so that he can really work for and go get the players he wants versus having to push for need. So we're seeing that. And I think edge is going to be one of them. I don't think they want to go into the draft without an edge. I think that is a high priority. Obviously, we've heard the rumors that tight end's a high priority, but I think bringing in an edge is a must here before the draft, especially now that they got at least Levi Wallace is coming back. So they have some competition for Dane Jackson and Levi Wallace. So at the worst case scenario, they're as good as last year's AFC championship game defense. And that's not a bad place to be. So I think they need to attack it. I like Carlos Dunlap coming back on I don't think the market for him after seeing what Reddick got, I'm not sure that he's got a big market. I think he's a guy that can be convinced to come hey, you're not going to get a lot of money, so come have a run at a Super Bowl with us, do a 1-year deal and do a Super Bowl with us. I think Clowney might be that opportunity where you can say, hey, come make a run for a Super Bowl and maybe get a contract. Like if you can stay healthy for an entire season and get a deal.
Get a lot of attention, a lot of primetime games, a lot of playoff games.
We don't need to keep you. It's a one-time thing. Yeah. I like the idea of Basham, I think, the most. I think
Terrell Basham, 26-year-old, upside
young,
left.
There's still some upside. I think that you can probably develop some of that. I think you develop him along with Epinesa, and I think that maybe you can get out and get your future ends on the cheap here for a little bit of time and maybe see if they attach to Jerry Hughes and learn some things here under some good leadership. I like that the best. And I think that it fills a hole where you feel comfortable going into the season with that unit if you're unable to address it in the draft, but that you still have enough room to, if something falls to you real sweet in the draft and you want to take it, you go ahead and do it. So, and then you still keep Basham and you have a nice rotation, which they like anyway. So I think it's a win-win to get somebody on the cheap. I think Basham's market's going to be below the Dunlop market.
It's going to be interesting. You mentioned Clowney and, going that route with Dunlap. Another guy in that tier is probably Melvin Ingram. That might be my favorite one. I'm curious what his price tag is going to be, but if it's in that Reddick tier, absolutely sign me up.
Sure.
Tyus Bowser is probably a half notch below Basham, but also a younger guy that maybe has some potential.
He went back to the Ravens, I thought, today.
Did he resign? Okay. I know Morgan Fox resigned, Taco Charlton resigned.
I think he did.
Hassan Reddick, those were guys on my original list. A notch below the older guys we talked about. I think Clowney, Ingram, and Dunlap have some genuine contributions left. More of a lower-end rotational guy. You have your Ryan Kerrigans, your Justin Houstons, your Everson Griffins. I wouldn't be upset with them. I'd probably rather a higher-end draft pick than those guys. I'd rather Melvin Ingram, Clowney, or Basham I think will contribute faster than any draft pick would that we could get as late as pick 30. So those are interesting ones there that from a pass rush standpoint.
Bowser got 4-year, $22 million.
Okay. Which that's a good number for him. Sure. Crone here saying about with Ford and Dawkins, the couple things that I don't see free agency being an option at guard any longer, because the guys we wanted were Zeitler. Norwell restructured his deal. Gabe Jackson signed. Richie Incognito signed. Feliciano signed. That entire tier of guards we were looking at are all gone. There isn't anybody obvious that is there would be an upgrade anyways. I think the draft is our chance to upgrade at guard. We need one more guy to put into a competition with Feliciano, Ford, Botker, and hopefully Elijah Vera-Tucker to be able to be...
Or Jenkins. Trade up for either one of those guys.
Oh, yeah. Give me somebody nasty and strong. Yeah. So a couple more that came in the questions here.
I just got you to say, yep, after I said trade up for something, just so you know.
You can't hold me to it.
Okay.
So, Corin, again, we appreciate you very much for the contributions. It's this one is an interesting one, and I bring this up because of another option that's in this tier. I had brought up Jamal Agnew, who signed for a pretty good deal out there, a little bit right around the money that I'm thinking for the other player here. I do think McKenzie coming back is a possibility. I think they could bring him back as the jet sweep guy and the returner in replacing Andre Roberts. Andre Roberts obviously signed with the Texans. Aaron and I have talked about him a couple times. I wouldn't hate Corduro Patterson. Corduro Patterson could be your kick returner, punt returner, and your third string running back all together in one. I think he would cost closer to the Jamal Agnew money and closer to that, $4 million and change number. But if you're telling me we get McKenzie, Roberts, and TJ Yeldon together, that's about $4 million. We get 2 free roster spots doing that route. If not, I won't be upset if it's Isaiah McKenzie for cheaper.
I'm still a little concerned about Isaiah McKenzie returning kicks. I know he had that nice kick against Miami, that kick return. Yeah. That was nice. I'm just happy to see it.
It doesn't erase the rough hands he had for years in Denver and then initially with Buffalo.
Yeah, and I don't know that I trust him yet. He can earn that trust. I'm fine with him taking that role and competing. What I don't want to see is Micah Hyde having to just go back there and just catch balls again because they didn't address it and trusted it to Isaiah McKenzie.
Dear Lord, somebody trying to tackle Micah Hyde. I don't want that.
No, and maybe they find some rookie receiver that's going to latch on and get a role in special teams and be able to do that role. But I do like the idea where you're up against the cap and you're trying to make some moves. I think you're now in a position where you could consolidate some roles. The first few years here of the process and the rebuild, bringing in a specialist like Roberts after the year McKenzie had and having to use Hyde, totally understood bringing in Roberts to make sure that that's one thing you don't have to worry about now as you build this team and that you're not losing because of that. Now that they're at the position that they are, I think that you can make a swing like that. I think the value's there to get a Cordell Patterson because, like you said, if he can line up and do some of the jet sweep stuff, if he can be your game day running back 3, maybe he's not actually running back 3. Maybe they keep Antonio Williams on the team and allow him to continue to develop, and he's not a game day active player because worst case scenario, you have Cordell Patterson who can just be running back 3 on game day and catch some balls out of the backfield. That's a huge chess piece for your team in terms of keeping that roster together and managing it for game days throughout the season. I love it. I think that it's a no-brainer type move for this team in the position that they're in where they have some limited cap space and really need to get guys that do more than just one specialist role.
Okay. Along those lines, while we're talking about what Patterson's kind of potential positions were, what are you thinking for running back?
I still like James White and Matt Breida. I think those are the two guys that I have my eye on. I think that there's not going to be a huge market for these guys again, just because running back, the value just isn't there league wide. We're not seeing, every once in a while you see a bigger name running back get a contract that everyone laughs at, but you're not seeing regular everyday running backs, third down running backs getting massive deals. James White just seems like a natural fit. Eric has referred to that type of guy before, so why not bring in the guy, with that name? Breida gives you a little more of the athleticism. I think he can probably pop a couple more of them for you during the year and give you the explosive plays I love. And that's where I want to see the upgrade to the running back room. If it's not pick 30 and you're getting a really high-end running back, bring in a guy that can be a third down back and do some work out of the backfield.
Yeah, so just an FYI, Mike Giannity at Spot Track just confirmed that the options being picked up do not by themselves create cap space for the Bills. They would have to separately do a contract restructure with the salary into a bonus.
Which I think they'd be able to do.
Yes.
Yeah, those are the guys that we talked about. That's easy to restructure because you want them here.
You're not going to be cutting.
Anyway,
you're not cutting Deion Dawkins or Trey White, so that's not happening. Yeah. I love Carl's comment here. If they were to then take the pick that they got from the Falcons and flip that to the package to the Eagles for Zach Ertz, that would be very funny.
Let's talk about Zach Ertz for a second.
Yeah, let's go to tight end in general.
Good conversation about Zach Ertz, I thought, here today. And I'm not sure on the value. I feel like it's been sort of placed all over the place when you're looking on Twitter. I don't know what the value is for Zach Ertz, but I'll go out on the line and say, for me, it's like right around a 5th round pick. Like, I'm not moving a whole lot more than that for him right now for this team, because I don't know that he moves the needle much more to give up too much more of an investment in the future.
Yeah. No, and I think that's fair. Anyone, I mean, obviously the Bills don't have a 4th round pick. We're not trading a 3rd round pick. So that's the only option I'm open to. And I even would want a pick swap, honestly, for where things are at to be able to get that money off of their cap. The rumor that we had heard was that the reason that rumors came out is because they were given authorization to reach out to teams to potentially discuss a contract renegotiation.
Right.
If you gave me both of those, if it was a day 3 pick, which honestly I wouldn't care if it was a 5th, a 6th, or a 7th, is not material.
He'll produce more than that player in 2021.
Yes. Yeah. And you're telling me we got a small extension to reduce his cap number. And then you're telling me we get a 2 or 3 year run with a reduced number that fits him in at a reasonable number. I am open to that to see if, just 15 months ago, he was in that run of 6 straight seasons of top 3 tight end production. Every year it was, Kels, Kittle, and Ertz. And Ertz was the top guy a couple times. And every single year, 800, 900, 1,000 yards. He's still just turning 31. He's not over the hill. He's younger than Travis Kelce. The position that he's in was a disaster last year in Philadelphia with terrible quarterback play, no blocking. He had to stay in a block a lot. The situation that he was in, he's not. He's a fine blocker. He's not an upgrade blocking wise. He's no Lee Smith. You're getting him because he's good at getting open and understanding leverage, getting into a good position, finding holes in the zone, and consistently making catches. That path, I think, is worth it. And ideally, some of the things we want, more route running nuance and positioning and leverage from Dawson Knox, maybe that mentorship is worth accelerating his area there. But, if you told me that instead they went out and got, Dan Arnold or something like that, or Jared Cook, I'd be fine. I think that Ertz is better than those guys. I think he'd produce more in 2021, but it's not that, he's the only guy that's worth getting. I just want to see additions at tight end because I'm not comfortable that Dawson Knox is the answer. I'm open to the fact he could be. I don't want that to be our plan going into the year. I want someone added at tight end.
Yeah. Luckily for you, I think they have to, right? Like we have to fill the roster.
Roster spot wise, they literally have to.
Yeah. And so why not bring in at least competition? I think we at least heard enough from Bean. I'm not as far as some people took Bean's comments to, oh my God, tight end is a huge priority and we're going to have to address it because it's going to be a feature of the offense going forward. And we're going to run a ton of 12 personnel. There's people out there. I'm not on that. I think they like Knox. I think they do. I think they've probably seen enough to continue to develop that player. I agree with you that I want to get better at that position. I'm not sure that you're going to get a guy like Zach Ertz and he's going to come in and all of a sudden overtake, and he's definitely not going to overtake Diggs in targets and production. I don't think he'll overtake Beasley in targets and production. I think he'll probably be your 4th, 5th option here for the most of the year. I think probably Sanders will have more production. Gabe Davis will be right there. Like those are still going to be here.
I could see him technically ending up 3rd because he was 68 and Sanders was 66 and Davis was 65.
Yeah. And he had more snaps than those guys, right?
Correct,
like he was in more often. So yeah, I think there's some production to be had. He would come into the Bills as going into it the best tight end as far as production that they've ever had. Obviously not with the Bills. He wouldn't be the best tight end the Bills ever had. Yeah. We would have to see that unfold, but he definitely come into the Bills with the most consistent production that they've ever seen a tight end. So that's intriguing to me. I just want to pump the brakes for the fans that think he's going to come in and just have 1,000-yard year. That's not this offense. I think that he's going to come in and, like you said, be a guy that maybe can do things a little bit more consistently than Dawson Knox while he continues to develop. I think they'd probably even split a lot of the touches. I think no matter what happens at this position, Dawson Knox is going to get run in this offense this year, and they're not going to all of a sudden do a ton of 12 personnel if they get, or it's each of those guys is going to get reps and spots in this offense. So neither one's a very good run blocker. That's still a concern. You're still going to address that maybe in the draft and get somebody that's a better run blocker, because it's something you do need. So there's a little bit of concerns with her. It's just not going to be just some slam dunk. I think a lot of media and fans are trying to make it sound like the Bills are definitely getting the productive guy from 15 months ago, and it's going to be a huge slam dunk, and he's just going to eat in this offense. I think it's probably somewhere in the middle of, he's done and washed up to he's a slam dunk. If there's production there to be had, I'd welcome it. For, like you said, swap some picks, lower that deal, handsomely welcome it. Totally.
If there was a deal that I was going to break the bank for with a day 1, day 2 pick, it would be that, Mike Mayock and John Gruden are continuing their fire sale that doesn't make any sense, and Darren Waller became available. You're telling me that, a younger, healthier guy in Darren Waller with 3 years at 18 million, it's like $6 million and change a year. You're telling me someone like that's available? I'll move a more material pick for someone like that. I don't see that being available. I don't see any of those top end guys being available. Very obviously, Kels and Kittle are not available. Mark Andrews isn't available. Just those kind of guys aren't there to be had. So
I think beyond you could see a second, third round addition if the draft falls the right way. I think there's some guys that
people like that Pat Fryermuth, people like other high end guys in that area that if you like. I know our friend Anthony over on the Hoof podcast loves Brevin Jordan. If those are guys that you like, sure. If Kyle Pitts falls for some reason to the 20th pick, by all means, jump up 10 picks and go get him.
Sure.
You want me to get on board with the trade up? There you go.
Somebody make a deep fake video of him with a grass mask on so that he falls to the Bills.
So Eric's question here, I will say, every hole and gap that gets filled makes it easier and more open for me for what I consider luxury picks at non-premium positions early in the draft. So you tell me that we do go out here and get a Carlos Dunlap, and we do get a Dan Arnold, and we do get, one more piece somewhere, maybe a cornerback or
Dory Jackson or something.
Yeah, something. Then you want to tell me that, all right, the package you go for is Travis Etienne is our Elvin Kamara, and he can be a returner, punt return and kick return and the game breaker in the backfield. All right, I'll be upset with it for a couple seconds, and then I'll just go watch his highlight reel and get myself excited again. That oh my gosh, look at this toy that we just gave Josh Allen. I still don't love the roster construction and the opportunity cost, analytics that go into. It's usually not smart to spend that pick on a running back. I'll get over it with a guy that it's as talented as Etienne or Harris, Najee Harris or whoever it might be. I can get my head around that kind of pick if it were to come to that.
Yeah, I like Harris and Javonte Williams. I think you give me any one of those guys at 30. If you construct the roster like we said and you fill holes going into the draft, I want elite players. This Bills team is at the point. I think for years the Bills were not good enough. They didn't have a quarterback and they chased elite players. In that situation, it's not good enough, right? That's good enough for 8-8, 7-9 seasons. Mediocrity is to have a handful of good players with no quarterback. Now you have a quarterback, you have a foundation, you have your cornerback, left tackle, you have all these foundational pieces that build a team. They're all young, you have them under contract. Now is the time to play with luxury items, like finding elite talent that falls to you at 30 and you take it. I think running back is definitely undervalued. I still think it's top heavy. When you have a chance to get elite players at that position and have them on a rookie deal, you ride them till the wheels fall off, man. You draft a Etienne or Najee Harris, and I'm not looking for that to be a long-term investment like I am other first-round picks. People are like,
like a tackle or a corner.
Totally, yeah, where you're going to have the guy for 10 years. I don't need him for 10 years. Ride him for 4 to 5 and see you later. Let's do it again.
Well, I just did it with the guys when I jumped on the Cleveland Browns podcast. The way that the contracts are set up now, you can have an elite running back and go a rookie contract, and then the franchise tag's $8, and then franchising them again is 9.6. And for any running back nowadays, you get 6 or 7 years out of them.
Yeah, if you make it to that point after we run you into the ground, good for you.
Yeah, God bless you. Yeah,
the window. There's going to be some windows here for the Bills, right? They're going to have this initial Super Bowl window, which I don't know how long it can run. It could be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, where they have a chance to go at it with this roster because they're young. Then they're going to have a secondary window where you see good teams with a good quarterback where they're on the second contract and there's somewhat of a rebuild. I'm fine with taking a Najee Harris, a Travis Etienne, and running him to the wheels come off and trying to win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years. And then I'll deal with running back position again. Like, if you can get elite talent in this building at any position that falls to 30, and I don't care if there's people at that position that we like, you bring in the elite talent and you figure out the rest later.
Yeah, and I know some other guys have gone the other route there, where maybe you don't bring back Isaiah McKenzie, but maybe you draft Rondale Moore, Elijah Moore, Kadarius Toney, those explosive wide receiver, gadget, jet sweep return guys. I'm open to that as well. It's not exactly where I'd like a foundational cornerback or pass rusher with our first round pick, or guard. Like, I'd love one of those pillar positions. My preference would be our first 3 picks are some order of pass rusher, cornerback, and guard. But if they were to get me some explosive weapon, like you said, elite talent in the building, okay, I'll go watch their highlight reel and soothe myself to get those things back.
I agree.
All right, so we've touched on, a lot of positions here. We didn't really you mentioned Adoree Jackson. Now that we've seen Dane Jackson's back, they re-signed Levi Wallace. The last couple years, they've added one more piece. Do you think that Levi Wallace is the veteran now because it's his 4th year, or do you think they go out and they go after one other piece? I know Eric likes Malcolm Butler. We had talked about William Jackson. He got a ton of money. Xavier Rhodes is still out there. I liked Jason Verrett. He got re-signed. I like Akella Witherspoon. He signed elsewhere. Are there other pieces there that you could see, or do you think Levi versus Dane is the majority of it?
No, I think this one's going to be a tough one, because I think if they bring in a veteran, I think if they bring in a Malcolm Butler or Richard Sherman, I think that pushes where they're thinking about taking cornerback in the draft down a little bit. I think that their idea is, hey, let's hit on this in the 5th round or something and get another Taron Johnson developmental type guy that we can bring in and develop along the way. And we can get through another season with the same setup that we've been running at cornerback too. And we all want, I think, improvement at that position, but at the same time, we need to pull it back and remember that this has been a top 10 defense in DVOA for the last 3 years. They've had some fantastic seasons in terms of statistics for defensive backs. Levi Wallace has been a part of that. Guys like Kevin Johnson have been a part of that. Josh Norman's, like all these rotational players that are adequate have been rotating at the cornerback 2 spot. What we want more, and yes, I agree that will help defend against a team like KC. The Buffalo Bills are still an elite football team rolling out Levi Wallace at cornerback 2 or a Richard Sherman at cornerback 2. And it doesn't address the athleticism. It still is going to be a pain in the ass to guard Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. 31 other teams are having that same problem.
In the same way that an offense with John Feliciano and Ike Bacher scored 500 points. Yes, I'd like to upgrade also, but it wasn't all that bad.
It wasn't the worst.
The floor is pretty high.
Yes, and I'm not saying all the units of the Bills are going to repeat the same success that they had a year ago. Cornerback, I feel pretty good at the McDermott, Butler, or McDermott and Babbage connection here and Leslie Frazier connection here at the defensive back position has been good. Their record is good at taking adequate talent and making it serviceable. That's a good trait to have. I think that it's out of the realm of possibility that they could add a Butler. Richard Sherman's been linked to them a number of times. I think that that's possible too, that he tries to win a title this once, and you let those guys all compete. I could see Richard Sherman stepping in here and being exactly what Josh Norman was supposed to be, where he goes into it as cornerback 2. They start right out of summer, and then Levi's there as insurance, and that's great depth and insurance in the NFL to have Levi Wallace and Dane Jackson there to supplement Richard Sherman if something goes wrong.
Absolutely. And I think a piece that you saw one more spot that people have talked about here, whether in the draft or elsewhere. Carlos talking here, it is a lot of fun that the Bills are picking late in the round. It won't be that fun Thursday night, April 29th, when we wait through everybody else picking. But it is great. A great problem to have. Yeah. A lot of people are asking about that third safety, big nickel. Are we comfortable with Taron Johnson? So one, anybody asking, yes, I'm very comfortable with Taron Johnson. To be completely honest, if you look at our free agents next year, they're Harrison Phillips, Jerry Hughes, Vernon Butler, Taron Johnson. Taron Johnson is by far my biggest priority out of those guys to bring back. I like Jerry Hughes a lot, but he's not. That would be like his age 34 season. So the priority for length of time is easily Taron Johnson. I want him back. I would like to upgrade Dean Marlowe. I know some names went out there with Keanu Neal, Jaquiski Tart. There's still some guys available there that would be interesting, and Eric brought it up. Now, you add both Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry to the Patriots, I'd like to have one more weapon there to help out in that situation. So Hamza Nasruddin, Jabril Cox, guys like that in the draft. I know our guys did work on Jacoby Stevens. I'd be open to that kind of signing as well. I don't expect it to be a big money one, but if we could bring in, a Malik Hooker on a kind of, injury reclamation project kind of deal, I'd be open to it.
I think you're going to need to bring in some type of safety anyway to fill a hole of that Marlowe role, whether or not he's going to be the thick nickel or whatever you call it, thick dime. Whether they're going to be that role or not, I think you need to fill that. So I can see that being the veteran route. If they do bring in a rookie like Nasruddin, I think it's more of a project. I think you look back to what they did with Matt Milano.
Yeah, he wouldn't be playing huge snaps year one.
I don't think he'd come in right away. I think maybe you roll him out specific game plan stuff against the team like the Patriots every now and then, but I don't know that they go away from their base. I think there's still going to be a lot of they're confident in rolling out what they do, and that they have enough confidence that they can wrap up and tackle and still do, even with limited personnel. If they can get that guy and he falls to him, great. But I don't know that's going to be a 2021, this guy's going to come in and immediately change the way they play defense. I think it would be something that takes time, develops into easing that role in slowly. Where I think a safety, though, like you said, that can come in to be a rotational safety and play that Marlowe role, they're comfortable with that role, and they can sort of add that in, even if they're only adding that in another 5% of the time or 10%. That's a substantial difference when you roll that out throughout the season. So I can see a scenario playing out like that, and I think they need to fill that role here soon.
Yeah. Now, if you tell me a plan where, like I said, I still prioritize Taron Johnson, but if you're telling me we have a chance at a Jaquiski Tart and that 11th defender spot is 20% AJ Klein, 40% Taron Johnson, 40% Jaquiski Tart, I'm very much in for that. I'm perfectly comfortable with that. And that there's plenty of formations where you could have Tart and Taron Johnson on the field at the same time.
Sure.
You have options to do that. I'd be very open to that scenario. And, it's not, I guess I'm kind of thinking as I go, it's not crazy then if you look at the dime coverage capabilities. If you were to bring in a Tart in a true dime third and long scenario, you could take Tremaine Edmonds off the field and leave Matt Milano as the linebacker with Taron Johnson in the slot and Jaquiski Tart as the big dime third safety. That just having flexibility options we haven't had before. That adding a weapon like that. So I think it's more likely it's a Dean Marlowe. It's a lower level guy who's more of a depth safety backup player who can contribute a little bit. But I'm intrigued by the idea of longer term what a Nasruddin could turn into, or a guy like that to be able to open up the playbook and give them one more option to be able to have.
Sure. I think in 2021 you're going to see on both sides of the ball, I don't think the Bills are going to deviate from who they've been here in 2020. I think you're going to see, I think Taron Johnson will be out there 98% of the snaps again in 2021. I think you're going to see very similar, unless they're able to, a top cornerback falls to them. And,
J.C. Horn falls to 30, right?
Yes.
And they need to get him on the field.
Stuff like that, and then you have the option to run some more defensive backs out there. I think you're going to see pretty much the same thing that we saw. A lot of zone. I don't think they're going to become a man team overnight just because that they want that flexibility. Even if they get a good man corner, I still think one of the best things about Trey White is his zone coverage. Like, you don't want to take away what some of the best qualities of your team is to disguise zones and to get into zone coverage. Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer are fantastic at this. Trey White sits on zones like nobody else and breaks on balls. Like, these are benefits to your team. You want the flexibility to do other things, but it's not going to be a massive change in the overall defensive philosophy or really the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, so we talked about that. If, say, they do make a move for a Zach Ertz, which is probably the highest level tight end they could go after, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden we become a 12 personnel team. It probably cuts into Dawson Knox's snaps quite a bit.
Sure.
It probably means that, hey, we might go from 6% 12 personnel to 11% personnel, right. But the 60% that we're running 11, it just means that Zach Ertz the majority of the time and not Dawson Knox. Yeah. So I don't expect it that it would mean that we would change our offense dramatically. It would just have a new starter at that spot.
Right.
So I think we've gone around the horn at just about every position here. Is there anything else we haven't touched on?
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I think, just kind of overall going and taking a look back at it, I think it's been a sneaky good week for the Buffalo Bills. If you told me that they were going to retain this much talent from the previous year and add a guy like an Emmanuel Sanders, and they're not done adding, I think they're going to get some nice deals here as the thrift shopping begins, as deals shake out. This is your
time of year.
Yeah, this is a fantastic time of year for Brandon Beane. This is where he's going to work some great deals. So I'm very excited. I think this is playing out not how I saw it. I think some things definitely went differently than I expected them to, but definitely in a way that makes me really excited about 2021. I think they have a good chance to run it back with some good additions to this team. There's still the draft coming up. Like, there's so many ways to add talent continuing to come up. So I don't think the Bills are getting enough credit. Obviously, New England's making all the splashes. The Jets, I think, sneaky went under the radar a little bit and got a lot better.
So some decent moves.
Still quarterback question. Still a big question at quarterback for them.
But obviously, with the number 2 pick, I'm assuming we're going to see a new rookie quarterback there.
Totally. And but yeah, the Bills aren't getting the attention I think they deserve. Smart people in the league, like the Warren Sharps and a few of the smart people in the league, are raving about the stuff the Bills are doing, but they're not getting the credit from the Bleacher Reports and the sports centers that are talking about which teams are having a good free agency. Brandon Beane is having a really nice free agency, and he's showing he might be executive of the year again after this.
They gave out $100 million in contracts in the past 5 days. It's just that 3 of them were re-signing their own people.
Right.
It's that doesn't get the attention that the Patriots brought in a bunch of new people. Well, yeah, because they lost a ton. Like, all the talk that's happened, they added Trent Brown, but they lost David Andrews, Joe Thuney, and Marcus Cannon. Like, their offensive line still has holes and issues. So
I feel like a year ago, people made more of a deal about what Kansas City was able to do. Yep. Obviously, they won a Super Bowl, so it's a little bit more difficult to bring everybody back. But people were raving about their ability to retain their players to continue a run. The Bills are really on pace with exactly what they do.
Same structure. Yeah. Exact same plan.
Yeah.
All right, man, this is a lot of fun. Obviously, Bills fans, we're going to do the same thing next week. We'll do maybe one more recap here on whatever happens between now and the next show. And then we're going to shift gears into draft work. And we're going to have a lot of good guests to bring on. Aaron and I shamelessly steal other people's hard work when it comes to draft time. We're going to bring on our guys, Russell Brown and Christian Page. We're going to have some other guests on, people like Bruce Nolan and Joe Marino and the guys over at NFL Draft Diamond, some people like that who are going to come in, give us their feed on if you were in the Bills. We'll run through some mock drafts with them and run the simulator up on the screen. Who would they pick? And then Aaron and I can make fun of who they pick or tell them they did a terrible job.
Yeah, or just agree with them without actually forming an opinion.
Yeah, I love that guy too. Great. Yeah, I definitely know about that Kentucky cornerback you're talking about. Yeah, I like him. So we're looking forward to that. We're going to bring you guys all that coverage here. Make sure you guys are checking out the guys over at Cover One Draft, Russell and Christian and Zach, and those guys do an awesome job. The guys over at the Hoof and Disguise Coverage are doing a fantastic job. Make sure you're checking out their feed, subscribing to their shows. Wherever you're listening to us, help us out. Give us a rating, give us a like, give us a review. Tell a friend about what we're doing here. Really, really appreciate it. You guys have been awesome here through the postseason and off season. I think we thought things were going to drop off more than they have, but you guys have been right with us. Some crazy numbers on recent shows with everything going on with the Bills, and that's awesome and a lot of fun to do.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Aaron, where can the good people find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Aaron Quinn 716, and yeah, turning my focus to the draft. This has been a weird year, Greg, because usually I'm starting my draft work before the playoffs start because I know the Bills are out of it. So going this late into the postseason and then having to kind of get over the offseason and look into free agency here. I've been behind on my draft work like probably never before, so I'm excited for some of those guests and here now to play catch up for the draft with you here for the next few weeks.
Yeah, 100%. The same for me. I've started to dive into a little bit here or there, but now it's going to be fun to really go full go.
Right.
So looking forward to you. You can find me on Twitter at Greg Thompson, hanging out in the Cover One Premium Slack channel. But on behalf of Aaron Quinn and Greg Thompson, you have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.